Hi, welcome to Visualizing Political Empowerment, How Artists Impact Social Justice and Civic Engagement. My name is Luisa Martinez. Today we'll be talking with three other amazing artists about the intersection of art and civic engagement, and I'll let them introduce themselves and then I'll talk more about what the panel will be about.
Hello everyone, I'm Jammal Lemy, a filmmaker and designer, former creative director of March for Our Lives, and founder of Modema Studios.
Chicano, to Santiago X. I'm a citizen of the Kusati Nation and indigenous Chamorro to the island of Guam. I'm an indigenous futurist and an interdisciplinary artist specializing in architectural, land, and new media installation. And my work critically engages the acceleration of our post-human trajectory and promotes while evaluating the human condition in relationship to the earth.
Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Lukashevsky. I'm from Honolulu, Hawaii, but now based in LA, and I am a visual artist, illustrator, and muralist who works at the intersection of art and social justice to elevate positive messaging around anti-racism, abolition, pro-immigration, and LGBTQIA issues.
Thanks all. As you can tell, this will be a brief but complex conversation about the practices that we want to see in the world. So each artist will be specifically addressing three different questions. We'll speak about an issue that our work is trying to tackle. We'll talk about what our audiences are and how our work relates to civic engagement, and what role our art has in social movements and what impact we hope to see our work having. And I'll kick it off. I'm gonna share some images of our work. Okay. So like I said, my name is Luisa Martinez. I am a fronteriza artist, organizer, and educator. I'm going to scroll through images of two recent projects, two zines made in collaboration with some great people. I work in many mediums, but I chose to feature the zine format because I feel it encompasses the nature of my practice at large, which is creating connections and sharing tools to participate in building radical inclusive futures. The first zine, the little pink one, Estas experiencias nos pertenecen, is a representation of work done with Otros Dreams en Acción, ODA, a Mexico City-based organization that supports Americans who have been deported due to lacking the privilege of documents. And the second one, the 2020 Voter Power Guide, was created with a band of voters, an LA-based organization that works to support student voters and inject some fun into the whole process. So Estas experiencias nos pertenecen, which means these experiences belong to us, registers migrant experiences highlighting the strength of communal bonds and the beauty of individual existence. I worked with artist Carolina Gomez to offer art making and dialogue to the ODA community as a way of being together and healing together. We ended our 5-week creative process with a display of our community's brilliance. We carried our drawings and stories throughout the city in a pilgrimage that celebrated our existence. Working with this community really made me realize, working with this community of Americans that have been deported, made me realize like the power of social responsibility and civic action. This project, this series of like workshops and moments in the city helped me understand the ripples of our actions as citizens of a region and how we live creates consequences that affect other populations and other geographies and our communities in other geographies. And the 2020 Power Voter Guide works to put the tools for change in the hands of as many people as possible. With this scene, we're trying to make voting accessible and engaging, which is like in general a Band of Voters mission. And this guide starts out by asking the user like what issues are important to them and their communities and sharing some other people's stories of why they vote. And then it takes us step by step through the process of voting. And I bring this project up because we're talking about voting today, but also because I think it could be like a counterpart to the first zine in that it gives you the tools to power up your empathy. So not only to feel with others, but to do something about those feelings. So in a sense, I feel like both Estas experiencias nos pertenecen and the 2020 Voter Power Guide point to the idea that civic action is both communal and extremely personal. And I think empathy is a way to get there. We can all understand graphs and data, but without the personal connection, it's hard to care, which I think is why I ended up being an educator. And being an educator allowed me to understand play and experimentation as a way to discover these interpersonal connections, which is exactly the process we went through with the ODA community. So to sum it up, the goal of my practice, which is often in collaboration with others, is to help us create rhizomatic relationships and understand our role as part of extended communities, acknowledging our communal potential to create just and liberated futures. And I'll end by bringing up a quote. So the other day in our prep chat, Ashley brought up Adrienne Marie Brown. And I actually ended my ODA reflection in the zine with a quote of hers. So Adrienne Marie Brown writes, "This is a time travel exercise for the heart. This is a collaborative ideation. What are the ideas that will liberate all of us? We must make just and liberated futures irresistible." And before I hand it over to Santiago, I want to once again name my collaborators because not I, we. So Oda Mexico at odamexico.org, Carolina Gomez at Mujer de Tepexpan, and A Band of Voters at abandofvoters.org, where you can download our voter guide. And now I'll turn it over to Santiago.
Hi, Santiago X here on Instagram, X the Shapeshifter. My website is santiagox.com. So, you know, as an interdisciplinary artist, I have the freedom to kind of jump in different mediums. And this, what you see in front of you is on the 4th of July in this rural town in Wisconsin, funded by private prisons. I did a guerrilla installation right on the main strip on the 4th of July where they're having the parade. And I took over this little cage and I put an American flag there touching the ground and you know, wanted to, this is at the same time when we were dealing with the issues of closing the camps or hashtag close the camps and you know, it's about July 2019. So, you know, I just took over this little strip and actually some local people were shooting guns trying to scare me away. But that's kind of the reality of this situation. You know, a lot of my work kind of jumps in back and forth between installation, fine art, street art. Sometimes I'll create some merchandise for people to wear at the street level to kind of push these ideas of indigenous futurism. You know, ancestrally, this land was taken, was controlled by women primarily, matriarchal societies. Both of my cultures, both of my indigenous backgrounds were run by women, and you know, art, politics, spirituality were often handed down through the women. So you see this shirt that I wore found its way to AOC, and kind of the serendipity of it. She's speaking about closing these concentration camps on the border. I live in Chicago. You know, before that, I wasn't really kind of assaulted in my daily life by this imagery, this racist imagery of sports teams. You know, most of these commercial sports teams have, you know, mascots in the forms of kind of like animals or kind of mythical creatures, but then you have indigenous people, severed heads on a pool of blood on these jerseys walking the street. You know, just as I'm trying to cross the street, my daughters are seeing this, the Sauk leader, Black Hawk, you know, with his head removed, floating in a pool of blood. So we started this movement to collect all these jerseys. And we've been doing it over the last year, and it's going to culminate in a communal burning of these jerseys as soon as the lockdown opens up. That's part of the plan. You can see in the next slide, I did an installation using some projection mapping, kind of this idea of the burial mound and putting those jerseys to rest. That turned into another streetwear movement called Kill Mascots, Save the People, which has been promoted by bands like Portugal the Man, Black Eyed Peas, Major Lazer. So what you do, the ideas that you have, they can find their different cracks and crack these foundations of distortion, crack these foundations of oppression, and create some real openings for people to reclaim spaces for oppressed people to find their voice. This is just a gesture. I thought it would be important to show today during this time of the pandemic. This is a wood carving that I did, kind of commenting on the racist undertones of the cigar store Indian, but throwing a gas mask on his face and calling it the protector. In Chicago, you know, we deal with shootings, and I think as much as we want to kind of point the finger, we also have to look in the mirror, you know, at these situations that are created, these situations of oppression and inequity, and you know, when we're looking, you know, who's really the to blame? You know, is it the shooter? Is it the target? And who is that? Who are you? You know, who are we? This took on a different kind of iteration in the form of the hunting blind. You see that in rural America, and typically that's, you know, for hunters to shoot deer. But if you imagine putting that on a one of the most dangerous intersections in Chicago, what does it mean? You know, who's the target? You know, in front of you, you see these artifacts that were looted by archaeologists, looting indigenous sacred sites. So what I wanted to do is put a heat map on those, not too dissimilar from topographical maps or weather patterns, but you're seeing the indigenous culture being targeted in the form of a hologram. I also do these mixed reality, interactive storytelling installations where I create these simultaneous 3D scan, 3D projection mapped kind of rooms. And you see behind you indigenous symbology of earthworks that were removed from the landscape to build these cities, to build L stops, to build highways, to build colonial buildings. And this is me trying to reform and recreate that world again. Through you know, different medium, indigenous futurism can find a voice. It doesn't matter you know, what it is: clothing, mixed reality, extended reality, virtual reality. These are all venues to tell our stories, and I think we need to crash all of these discourses. Recently, I've been kind of guerrilla style installing these huts, these traditional indigenous huts. This I made out of grasses that were collected from the streets of Chicago, this non-native invasive species of grass, and I'm taking over the city blocks. The Chicago Architecture Biennial invited me to be the first Native American architect to install there. So what I did was I took that hut with these invasive grasses and I set it on fire in the middle of this celebrated colonial building, the Chicago Cultural Center. There's a detail of the flames and the grasses. Another part of my work, as I mentioned, was land art, and I want to create indigenous places again in the middle of the city. You know, most cities east of the Mississippi River were populated with indigenous mounds, mound civilizations, from Peru all the way up to Minnesota. Mound civilizations populated this land. And here I am creating my very first earthwork here in the city of Chicago. It's called Poctochinto in my indigenous language, which means the serpent twin. So if you go back one, you'll see the opening of these earthworks. We had, you know, quite a few people to see this. This is the first indigenous effigy mounds to be built since the founding of the United States. You know, these earthworks, if you go to the next slide, these earthworks are not just, you know, sculpting the earth. They're portals for indigenous people. They're places for us to contemplate sustainable placemaking and our perpetuity with the earth, with the planet. So I also, in installation form in these different institutions, you know, put these portals. So as if you're looking through these buildings, you're looking through these corner conditions that we create, these traps we've created for ourselves, and you can see through all the distortion and bust through. This is a piece I call The Return. This was at Ars Electronica in Linz, Austria. where there was also an audio installation of my daughter, my 1-year-old, trying to read a book in English, but all that came out was her native baby tongue.
Thank you for sharing, Santiago. I'm going to move on to Ashley just to keep with time.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Santiago. That was amazing. I could listen to you talk all day.
Oh, sorry to go so long.
No, that was so great. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Ashley. I am a visual artist and illustrator. And, you know, Luisa in the beginning talked about how we were speaking about Adrienne Marie Brown and emergent strategy when we talked last. And one of the things that is so poignant that she says in her book is that we are currently living in the imagination of the select few white men who've built this world, based it on colonialism, based on white supremacy and patriarchy. And so in order to create the world that we want to see, I believe that it's super important for us to have a visual roadmap to what that looks like, because if we can imagine it, then we can bring it into reality. And so that's what my goal of my work is. It's really creating the world that I want to live in, that I know my communities want to live in, and hoping that through having this visual representation of it, we're able to catalyze action towards actually organizing for those things. So what we have showing right now is a collaboration I did with ECLU Northern California. And this is actually also based on an emergent strategy concept. The idea of dandelions as being this overlooked, beautiful natural resource for healing and nurturing for animals and humans. And it's something that's like widely propagated, just like our passions and our activism, and that we are all seeds, and we are seeds for our communities, and we can grow this love for people and want like strong desire for transforming systems. So I really see my work as having two main roles in this visioning work. A lot of it is shared over social media, though I am trying to spread more to actual street installations. And with the last DA election in Los Angeles, where we had a primary election trying to get rid of our current DA, Jackie Lacey, who was a huge perpetuator of the mass incarceration and carceral system in LA. I went and plastered tons of street art and different statistics about what she's been doing in office. But for right now, a lot of it lives on social media. And so I see my work as really playing two roles. One is kind of preaching to the choir, but you know, even the choir needs a sermon to keep us motivated. And a lot of people who share my work and are encouraged by the work are people who are already working and organizing to transform these systems. And so it's like a message to people, especially queer people of color, people who haven't been supported in the mainstream, that you are loved, you are supported, your work is important, and we are in this together. And the second part is trying to use bright colors, beautiful imagery, all the tools that I use in my work to grab other people's attention, people who might have a little bit of political knowledge, might consider themselves a feminist, or learning about anti-racism work, learning about abolition, and trying to pull them in and pull their attention in just a little bit longer so that we can use that time to radicalize them a little bit more, pull them into the organizing and get them to show up. So I want to end with this quote by Toni Cade Bambara, and it's one of my favorite quotes, and it really captures the essence of what I'm trying to do. And it's that the role of the artist is to make revolution irresistible. Thank you, guys.
And we're gonna end with Jammal.
Yes, of course. So the image you're seeing here, hello everyone. First off, hello everyone. I am Jammal Lemy once again. My art has taken many shapes throughout my journey, and I think collaboration is the best way to not only, you know, create art, but to distributed as well. Because with us all being quarantined now, I think it's kind of proven true now more than ever. Like, it's not just about I or ourselves, it's about the collective community. And making sure how are we holding each other accountable and using each other's platforms and just, you know, skills to kind of continue our work without being in the physical space. And I've just kind of kept that energy throughout all that I've created or will continue to create. But as for this image, this is a collaboration project I did with the artist Jenny Holzer back in 2018 for the midterm elections. And it was this idea of like how, because with Jenny's work, there, you know, she's compiling phrases and she's compiling phrases and text and from not only poets but community organizers, artists, just people, you know, from all different identities and backgrounds, and just displaying their raw truths. So when she approached me with this idea of, you know, how do we kind of pull the ideas and what the young people in the not only the gun violence space but the voter rights space, the voter education space, to create these texts that we can show the world. And she said, how do we do that? So we sat on the phone for a couple of hours and just said, whether it was vote for your life, vote for those who can. It's not it's not me, it's we. We were creating these phrases alongside other activists and young people of different identities to put into the central place. And I think we ended up at the end having like 8 or 10 minutes of phrases for this animation, and we took them and we put them on these double-decker buses and drove them around South LA to begin with, and then we moved to cities like New York, DC, Milwaukee, Houston, Miami, etc. And it was crazy as you saw like people walking through the streets and kind of seeing this messaging. And a lot of people, it was their first time seeing that perspective for things as like something as widely known as voting, right? It's an election year. We did this the October right before everything happened. So it was just a really great opportunity and platform to like really expand that. And through some of my other work, so like just while my kind of practice being interdisciplinary, like I wasn't formally an artist first. I come from, the world of storytelling and filmmaking. And I ventured into fashion designing, merchandising, etc. And at my time with March for Our Lives, one of my roles was to create merchandising. And while I was working on a video, I was playing with QR codes and designing merchandise simultaneously. And this QR code, American flag shirt, is what kind of came from all that. And in its kind of duration, it's registered anywhere between 60 and 80,000 voters. And became a tool of not just vote registering people, but creating conversation and starting dialogue, because we noticed that every time someone saw this shirt or got their hands on it, like the conversation went deeper than the actual physical shirt. And that's just that's just something that, I try to keep within my practice. How do I radically shift perspectives and use these disruptive forms of educating and opening up people to different worlds and processes like Santiago and Ashley said earlier. And just, thank you for you both sharing and, taking this space and, giving us your story.
Sorry, I keep forgetting my mic is muted. Thank you everyone for sharing. It's so exciting to see everybody's work and like the different mediums that we all use. I think to me, that's really important, especially with the quote Ashley shared about making like revolution or these like just futures irresistible. And as a visual person, like to me, that's really part of it, like the space you're in, the things you're looking at. So yeah, I just wanted to comment on that and like on the beauty of the work, and also motivating like whoever's watching to know that they have like the potential to create these different campaigns or objects for change, right? So anybody can pick up some tools and create something and share their experiences with others. So if anybody wants to add any other comment, I'll end with that.
You can see it in all of our work. When you have an idea and you want to see some radical change, all you have to do is, you know, put pen to paper, start walking, start moving some earth, and make that change, you know, and inspire others along the way. We're all in this collectively together, you know, and so we got to think about all the inequities, you know, in our country, in our county, on this world, on this planet, and we have to address those things, you know, however we as individuals feel the power to address them. And all of our voices matter. There's room for everybody, and there's room for everyone's voice.
So thank you all. Thank you for coming to the panel. Our names are Luisa Martinez, Ashley Lukashevsky, Santiago X, and Jammal Lemy, and you can find us all somewhere online.
Bye.
Bye.